All right, guys, we're continuing our series on the Book of Life, and we want to demonstrate and illustrate the principle of what it says in Revelation chapter 6, because it is the Book of Life, as we'll demonstrate. So what it says the heavens are removed as a scroll, okay? So this scroll is a scroll in the heavens described in Zechariah chapter 5. Okay, so whether the scroll be opened when the Lamb opens the seal, or whether it be the heavens be rolled up as a scroll, either way, there is a book in the sky. Okay, and that's what we're trying to illustrate, is a scroll in the sky, which we're going to suggest to you has the information of part of the Book of Life. The part of the Book of Life it's talking about, of course, is the sixth seal, when the 144,000 are described, okay? And so when they're described, we conclude that that's what the scroll is that's in the sky, okay? In Revelation chapter 6, verse 12, when the sixth seal is opened, heaven was removed as a scroll. And then it says, withhold the winds until we have sealed the servants of God in their forehead, in Revelation chapter 7. And then we see the names written, okay, according to the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. So what we're going to submit to you in this presentation is that the heaven removed as a scroll, all right, is clearly the Book of Life. And we can prove this in multiple ways, certainly in Isaiah 34. But the thing we're going to try and demonstrate in this video is to show you that the Book of Life has three parts to it. There's actually three scrolls. So yes, the Book of Life has three scrolls, which we will once again illustrate and show you. All right, the three scrolls, what they're going to relate to is the three people groups. Those of you that are familiar with this channel, you know that we have spoken at length about three people groups, being the man-child, okay, or in this case we're going to call that the priesthood, the 144,000, and then the great multitude. So quite often, you know, the 144,000 and the man-child is together like the elect. And they are on a section of the Book of Life, okay, where it is clearly defined as three separate parts, which we'll go through in this video and in the next one. But basically they're in a scroll called the Scroll of Memorial. And the Scroll of Memorial you can read about in Malachi chapter 3. Malachi chapter 3, it says, when those that fear Yahweh spoke one to another, Yahweh heard it, and a scroll, sephar in the Greek, of Zikron, memorial, okay, was written before him. Okay, so when those that fear Yahweh spoke one to another, they're speaking one to another because their names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life. Okay, and Yahweh made note of it and wrote that in the scroll of memorial. And then what we have is this principle as well throughout the book of Revelation, which we will further explain. So for example, in the scrolls that you're looking at here, this one here, my thumb is holding, this is the scroll of the man-child. This is going to be Revelation chapters 1 through 5, okay, in those events. Then we get Revelation chapter 6, okay, being the 144,000, the heavens removed as a scroll, as we explained. And we're illustrating that scroll in the sky because it's the Book of Life from Revelation chapter 20, where it says, when the white throne judgment, it says the heavens and the earth fled away. The earth and the heaven fled away. So it's like heaven removed as a scroll. Okay, so that's heaven being removed as a scroll, the same thing we saw, okay, that the heavens removed as a scroll in the sixth seal. So that's 144,000. They're, of course, listed in Revelation 7 and 14, and the cubits of New Jerusalem, 144 cubits, okay. Now, then we have the great multitude, who's also listed there in Revelation chapter 7, okay, and then they come up as well as the great army, and they come up as the wheat harvest, okay, And then, thus, in the end, all are in New Jerusalem by the time we get to Revelation chapter 21 and 22. Okay? Now, we'll show you we showed you in part 1 how it's the priesthood, okay, because they're in the beginning of the book and the end of the book in the millennium, okay? So, what are we talking about? Basically, what we're talking about is that Revelation chapter 1 says, we thank you, O Lord, because you have redeemed us from every tribe, kindred, and nation, and made us kings and priests. That's the royal priesthood in Revelation chapter 1, verse 5, and that's repeated in Revelation chapter 5. Okay, so that's a scroll being opened in Revelation chapters 1 through 5, okay, of the scroll of the man-child, okay? And they're described as kings and priests, which you see Revelation 1:5, Revelation 5:10, all right? And those verses, king and priest, repeated in Revelation 20 during the millennium. All right, so there we can clearly see the book of life being expressed in Revelation chapter 1 from the beginning, all right? Then we see a scroll in the right hand of him that sat upon the throne, and we conclude that within that scroll as well would be the book of life. That's in Revelation chapter 5. No man could look at the book. The only one worthy to look at the book and to open the seals thereof was the Lamb. So it describes a book. It could be, a biblion is what it says basically in Greek, but basically it has seals to it, so we conclude it's more of like a papyrus type scroll. And so no one was worthy to look at it or to open the seal except for the Lion of the tribe of Judah had prevailed to open the seal. He begins to open the seal, and it was written on both sides. Okay, it was written on both sides, and there are 7 seals. So thus we conclude that within that it is also the book of life there, beginning the proceedings of Revelation as we see the Lamb opening the seal and releasing, the phases of the apocalypse. All right, so we do have notes for this message, okay? And again, we'll go over the notes, but we want to maintain this principle that there are 3 scrolls, okay? So we're going to do this in 2 parts. We're going to talk a little bit about it here in this video, for many of you, just kind of introducing this as a concept, and then we'll have another part where we talk about the 3 scrolls and more information to prove it by looking at the original language, looking at the Hebrew, looking at the Greek. Okay, but let's get to our notes, and let's take a look at what we just described, heavens being removed as a scroll, and then the order of the book of life in Revelation chapter 6 and 7. All right, here's our notes. And again, we're on Book of Life 3 scrolls, and that's the concept we're introducing in this video. And we also want to illustrate to you what we're kind of talking about in Revelation chapter 6. So let's get a zoom in here. And here you can see the Book of Life as a heavenly scroll. Okay, so the heavens departed as a scroll. All right, and that's what we're showing you here. We were showing you in the beginning of the video that scroll in the heavens is the book of life, also as illustrated in Zechariah chapter 5. All right, so then what happens is then we see the throne of the Lamb. It's highlighted in yellow here, but it says Lamb. And then in chapter 7, there are 4 angels standing in the 4 corners. Those are the cardinal points. And then they're holding the 4 winds, which are the wheels. Okay? And we believe the wheels and the winds is kind of like planets. Sorry, flat earthers. But then what we see is around the throne of the Lamb and around this order in Revelation chapter 6, verse 17 of the throne of the Lamb, because they hid themselves, 4 angels standing, holding the 4 winds, that then we see the order of the 144,000 as 12 tribes. so that they stand in position of those cardinal points, lion, ox, man, eagle, or lion, ox, man, eagle, however you want to position it. All right, here's Judah, lion. All right, so that they then stand in camps encompassing around the throne of the Lamb. And then we see the number of them sealed is 144,000 of the order of the 12 camps. So this is the scroll, okay, of the 144,000 being released as the book of life, portion of the book of life in Revelation chapter 6, okay? Now, as we explained in the beginning, in Daniel 10, the judgment is set and the books are open. So that's just procedural, how judgment takes place. And when the judgment is set, we see that in Revelation 20, the great white throne, and him that sat upon it. Then it says, from whose face the earth and the heavens fled away. Same principle as we were showing you before, okay, in Revelation chapter 6, when heaven was removed as a scroll, okay? So, heaven removed as a scroll, and then it says in Revelation 20:12, and another book was opened of life, and the ones were judged out of those books. So Revelation 6:2, at the sixth seal, heaven departed or separated as a scroll when it is rolled together, like being fled away in Revelation 20. Thus representing the scroll being open, okay? And when it's open, all right, the kings of the earth, they hide themselves from the face of him sitting upon the throne. So we see the same thing in the relationship of the scroll with the throne. Just like in Revelation 20, we see a great white throne, and we see the books being open. Another book of life, okay? So that's what we are saying, is that the book of life is also here in Revelation 6 as the portion of the book of life related to the 144,000. Then at the sixth seal, the book of life, when it's open, just like Revelation 20, and the names on the scroll are the 144,000 with the seal of God. Then in verse 9, we see the great multitude, and then verse 15, it describes the man-child. Okay, so all of this is being revealed from the heavenly scroll. Okay, the man-child is the sons of Zadok that serve in the throne of God in the temple, and he will tabernacle among them. Okay, so thus in the sixth seal, it becomes revealed in the book of life that there's 144,000, there's a great multitude, and then there's the sons of Zadok, which is the priesthood that serves in the temple, which you read about in Ezekiel chapter 40 through 48. Thus, the book of life is opened, and it reveals three sections of people categorized, okay, in Revelation 20. So just like we can see here, the categories of the three sections, of the three parts of the book of life, 144,000, great multitude, man-child, we see the same thing in Revelation 20 as it relates to the inheritance during the millennium. Okay, the inheritance, it describes the breadth of the earth, or the nations. That's the great multitude. And we conclude the breadth of the earth here is the more or less the land area of the ancient Persian Empire. And then it says the camp of the saints. Okay, so the camp of the saints, this is basically representing the 12 tribes as ordered in the book of Ezekiel, and that's represented the 144,000. Then it talks about the beloved city, or the loved city, Jerusalem, and this is those in Jerusalem is the holy priesthood. Okay, and we do have confirmation of the three sections, all right, in Isaiah chapter 4. So as we mentioned in the previous video, there were 7 women, Isha, representing the 7 churches. That's in Isaiah chapter 4, verse 1. And then verse 3 says, he in Zion and left in Jerusalem shall be called holy, everyone written among the living. All right, so this is clearly talking about the book of life in Jerusalem. So this is those dwelling in Jerusalem, all right, Then it says, of the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and beautiful. Now we conclude here, fruit of the earth is representing the wheat harvest in Revelation 14. Okay, the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely. And them that are escaped of Israel. All right, this is the camp of the saints we had talked about before. So we have the wheat harvest, the breadth of the earth. Okay, we have those that escaped of Israel, which is the camp of the saints, 144,000. And then it says those in Zion and Jerusalem, just like the beloved city. You had Jerusalem. This is those dwelling in Jerusalem as the holy priests serving in the temple. All right. So again, we have a clear order of the book of life being expressed in the sixth seal with 3 sections to it. And the book of life being expressed in inheritance with 3 sections to it in Revelation chapter 20. And we see confirmation of that, of 3 sections and people groups in Isaiah chapter 4. Now, in our next part, we'll just kind of plant a seed and show you our next section of notes. But we want to mention this because this is going to connect Isaiah chapter 34 in the 6th seal with the book of life. So we just want to show you how the book of life is also in Isaiah 34. And we'll do a more detailed analysis on Isaiah 34 because it warrants its own message. But we just want to connect it to what we're talking about in this video, where it says, all the hosts of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled together as a scroll. So this is clearly talking about the same thing in Revelation 6:12. And all the hosts shall fall down as a leaf in a vine, as a falling fig from a fig tree, which is exactly says. It says stars will fall from heaven as figs from the fig tree in Revelation 6. Okay. Then it says, seek out of the book of Yahweh, thus the book of life. All right. So this is Isaiah 34:16, and read, no one of them is missing. All right. So this is a point by which the book of life is fully written. All right. None of them are missing. And then it says, no woman, which is Isha. This is a woman. This is a bride. No woman shall want of her female mate. Okay? And what this means is that the people go 2 by 2. And then verse 16, it talks about the gathering under 2 wings of a great bird. All right, so they're gathered, they're brought by the wings of an eagle. And the great bird made her nest and lay and hatched her brood under her shadow. All right. And the vultures gathered, or eagles, all right, Isha and mate, Ruth. So this is the name Ruth. So it's Isha, bride, and Ruth, just like Ruth means female companion. Okay, so this is the bride of the bride Isha and Ruth, okay, going 2 by 2, gathered by the 2 wings of a great eagle. All right. So this is the language of the book of life. Seek out of the book of Yahweh and read. None of them is missing. Okay, so what have we learned? All right. Heavens are removed as a scroll. Okay, that's the book of life. And it's the order around the throne: lion, ox, man, eagle, 4 cherubim, 12 tribes. Okay, we learned that the book of life is expressed as 3 scrolls. We have the scroll of the priesthood. We have the scroll of the 144,000. Okay, and then we have the scroll in the book of the great multitude. Okay, and we will, some of this doesn't make sense. Don't worry, be patient. Follow the series, each video. You might want to go over it. You might want to get the notes. We'll make the notes available. They're posted on the website, leelandjones.com, to go to Course 5, Millennium, and then go to Book of Life. That'll have the PDF file for these notes. All right, so there we can see there's 3 scrolls. We can see the order of the book of life there in Isaiah chapter 4. We can see the order of the book of life in the 3 people groups, okay, And there, we'll talk about in the next video the lot, and then we'll also talk about more proof and evidence of the book of life in Isaiah 34. It warrants its own study. We're just explaining how it's connected to the sixth seal. Okay, so like we said, it's going to be an interesting series. What have we learned? We've learned that the book of life really begins in part 1 as parallels in Revelation 1, paralleling with Revelation chapter 20, 21, 22 at the end of the book. We learned that the book of life is the 7 ecclesia. We learned that the book of life, the people on the book of life should understand prophecy. Okay. We understand that it's a dreadful thing, the book of life. Names can be removed. And in the next part, we will prove that the book of life, there are some names that were written before the foundation of the world. So before people were alive on the earth as humans, their names were already written in the book of life. We can show you that in our next part, okay? But in this one, we're introducing the idea and concept of the 3 scrolls, the scroll of memorial, all right, and we'll get more into Isaiah 34 in the next message, okay? Definitely get the note, study it. This is dreadful study, guys. I know everybody thinks they're saved. Everybody thinks their name in the book of life, but it's quite sobering if you do this study, what really the Bible says, okay? So be sure to follow the whole series, and we will have the notes available on the website. Maybe we'll link that in the description field for the video. So a voice came from the throne saying, "Praise our God, all you his servants, that fear his name, both small and great."